Welcome to Pagoda Podcast, where we explore ideas, strategies, and insights to help businesses grow and scale.
Thanks for having me on.
So imagine building a company from the ground up, pouring just years of sweat equity into it.
Yeah, the classic founder journey.
Right. And you finally get it to a point where it generates, say, $5 million a year in pure profit.
Which is a huge milestone.
It is. So you decide it's time to sell, expecting this massive, life-changing payday.
Naturally.
But then a private equity firm takes a look under the hood, and they basically tell you your company is practically worthless.
Oh, man. I mean, it sounds like a founder's worst nightmare, but the reality is that happens every single day in the mergers and acquisition space.
Every day.
Literally every day. And the reason why is almost always completely misunderstood by the person selling the business.
Which is exactly what we are going to unpack today. Because for you listening, whether you are, actively trying to position your company for an exit, or you're just fascinated by the hidden mechanics of how businesses are actually valued behind closed doors, this deep dive is going to fundamentally change how you look at business growth.
It really is a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah, and we are pulling insights today from a fascinating piece of source material called Architecting Value: Scaling Business Through Systematic Predictability.
A great text.
So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why building systems, and not just chasing sales, is the actual cheat code to securing a massive valuation.
Right, because there is this very persistent, almost romanticized myth in the business world about what actually creates value.
Like making more money.
Yeah, exactly. Most founders are completely fixated on the top line. I mean, they think valuation is a simple math equation based entirely on how much revenue they can generate.
Yeah, if the graph goes up and to the right, the company is worth more.
That's the assumption. But as we dig into this text, the central thesis emerges immediately, which is buyers do not just buy income, they buy predictability.
Okay, I hear that, but let me just jump in right here and express some genuine skepticism.
Sure, go ahead.
Because if I'm a savvy business owner, my immediate thought is, practically speaking, buyers look at EBITDA. They look at earnings.
They do look at earnings, yes.
So if my margins are at like 40% and I'm throwing off massive cash flow, you're telling me a buyer is going to walk away just because my operations manual isn't updated?
Well,
I mean, that sounds like a stretch. Isn't a business primarily valued on its cash?
it is valued on its cash, yes. But specifically, it is valued on the certainty of its future cash.
Certainty.
Exactly. And this is the absolute core of the predictability paradigm. When a buyer or, a private equity group looks at your 40% margins, they aren't just celebrating your past success.
They don't care about what you did yesterday.
Not really. They are actively hunting for risk. They're looking at those margins and asking, what is the likelihood that this 40% margin completely collapses the day after the check clears?
Ah, okay. So it's a risk assessment, not just a financial audit.
Exactly. I mean, the valuation of a business is typically a multiple of its earnings, right?
Right, like a 4x or 5x multiple.
Right. And that multiple is essentially a direct reflection of risk.
Right.
If your money is good, but the process of making it is entirely reliant on, say, the founder's 80-hour work weeks.
Which is super common.
And, tribal knowledge and just sheer willpower. The risk of that income disappearing post-sale is immense.
Because the founder leaves and the willpower leaves with them.
Precisely. And buyers penalize that risk heavily. They don't just ask for a slight discount. They will slash the multiple from a 6 down to a 2. Or, honestly, they will simply walk away entirely.
Wow. So if we look at the mechanism of that, the multiple isn't just some arbitrary industry standard.
Not at all.
It's basically a sliding scale based on how confident the buyer is that the machine will keep running without you.
That is a perfect way to put it.
I mean, it makes me think of buying a car. Like, instead of looking at a business like a classic car where, it's cool if it goes fast, but you have to jiggle the key and whisper to the dashboard just to get it to start.
Right. Nobody wants to inherit that headache.
Exactly. A buyer looks at a business more like buying a pharmaceutical formula.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Right, because if you have this highly profitable drug, but it's completely unpatented, and only one single scientist knows how to mix the ingredients purely by eye and memory.
Nobody is paying top dollar for that company.
Exactly, because what if the scientist trips and falls?
That is a much more accurate way to look at it, actually, because if that one scientist gets sick or leaves, the asset is instantly worthless.
The revenue drops to zero.
Yeah, I mean, the product might be incredible, the current cash flow might be phenomenal, but the predictability is zero.
So the buyer has no confidence.
None. But when a buyer looks at a company and sees documented, repeatable processes, their confidence just skyrockets.
Because they can see how it works.
Exactly. They see an engine that turns over on the first try, every single time, no matter who is actually turning the key. Buyer confidence is the literal currency that drives up your multiple.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So if buyers are actively hunting for risk to discount your multiple, where exactly are they looking first?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because if you want to command top dollar, you really need to know where the vulnerabilities are in your business. And our source text outlines a core trinity of systems that are just absolutely non-negotiable for a high valuation.
Yeah, the text zeroes in on three specific pillars. We're talking about operations, sales, and financial reporting.
The big three.
The big three. These are the three areas where a lack of predictability will instantly kill a deal.
So let's break those down. Let's start with the first one, operations.
Okay, so the standard the text sets is that operations must be meticulously documented. But, we really need to clarify what documentation actually means in this context.
Right, because we aren't talking about a dusty three-ring binder sitting on a shelf in the break room that nobody has opened since, 2019.
No, not at all. It's about decoupling the knowledge from the employee.
Decoupling the knowledge, what does that look like?
Well, in academia, they talk about tacit knowledge versus explicit knowledge.
Okay.
Tacit knowledge is what lives in your head, right? It's your experience, your intuition, muscle memory.
The stuff that's hard to explain to someone else.
Exactly. Explicit knowledge, on the other hand, is codified. It's written down, it's measurable, and most importantly, it's easily transferred.
Got it.
So if your fulfillment process relies on, say, Sarah knowing exactly how to pack the boxes because she's done it for 5 years, your operations are entirely tacit.
And if Sarah decides to move to another state or, I don't know, wins the lottery, your operations grind to a complete halt.
Right. And during due diligence, the buyer sees Sarah as a massive liability, not just a great employee.
Which is totally counterintuitive for most founders who love their veteran staff. So a high valuation company takes Sarah's tacit knowledge and translates it into explicit systems.
Precisely. It's the difference between relying on a seasoned veteran's intuition versus, say, using a barcode routing system and standard operating procedures that literally any new hire can learn in 20 minutes.
So documented operations basically prove that the business is an independent entity, completely separate from the individuals running it at any given moment.
Yes. But, having a perfectly documented operation doesn't mean anything if you can't feed the machine.
Right. You can have the best, most systematized assembly line in the world, but if the raw materials like the leads and the closed deals stop coming in when the founder goes on vacation, the business still starves.
Exactly. Which brings us right into the second pillar, sales.
Yeah, let's talk about sales, because this is usually the founder's baby.
It is. But the source material states unequivocally that sales must be a repeatable process.
Repeatable.
Yes. And this is often where small to mid-sized businesses just completely fall apart during due diligence.
Really? Why is that?
Because their sales are almost always driven entirely by a rainmaker. And often that rainmaker is the founder themselves.
Oh, yeah. They have the charisma, the industry connections, that killer instinct to close the deal.
Exactly.
But the problem is, instinct is impossible to scale. I mean, you can't put charisma into a spreadsheet.
You really can't.
I see this all the time, a founder boasts about their incredible close rate, but when you ask them how they actually do it, they say something like, oh, I just know how to read the room, or I just take clients out to dinner and we figure it out.
And to a buyer, that sounds absolutely terrifying.
Because if the buyer can't read the room, the revenue stops.
Because it is terrifying. If your revenue depends on one charismatic individual, your revenue is inherently fragile.
So what does a repeatable sales process actually look like to a buyer?
A repeatable sales process means you have engineered a predictable pipeline. You know your exact customer acquisition cost.
Okay.
You know the lifetime value of a client. You have defined lead generation mechanisms. You have proven conversion rates at each stage of the funnel. And you have standardized pitch decks.
So it's a machine.
It's a math equation.
Yeah.
You know that if you put $1 into this specific marketing channel, you will get $3 out the other side, consistently, every single time.
It really transitions sales from being this mystical art form into being, a mathematical equation. It makes it predictable.
Exactly.
But even if you have the operations dialed in and your sales pipeline is this predictable mathematical equation, there is a third pillar that can completely derail everything if it's ignored.
Oh, absolutely. the financial reporting.
Yeah, and frankly, this is the one that trips up a lot of brilliant visionaries. They build a great product, they sell the heck out of it, but their financial reporting, this third pillar, is just a complete disaster.
It's so common. And messy financials are, without a doubt, the absolute quickest way to kill an acquisition.
Really, the quickest.
Oh, yeah. The text emphasizes that a company must feature what they call clean numbers. Because when a buyer or a private equity firm issues a letter of intent, they move into a phase called due diligence.
Right, the probing phase.
Yes, and they send in forensic accountants to verify every single claim you've ever made about your profitability.
And if those forensic accountants have to spend 3 weeks, untangling the founder's personal car lease and family vacation expenses from the company's actual software subscriptions,
The alarm bells start ringing immediately.
I can imagine.
Commingled funds are a massive red flag,
Yeah.
but, it goes even deeper than that. It's also about your accounting methods.
What do you mean?
Well, if you are running a $5 million company on cash basis accounting rather than accrual accounting, your profit and loss statements might be completely masking the reality of your liabilities.
So you look profitable on paper today, but you owe a fortune tomorrow.
Exactly. And if you can't quickly produce accurate, JAC-compliant financial statements, a buyer will immediately assume there are skeletons in the closet.
It's basically a trust issue, isn't it?
100%.
If they can't trust the basic math of your daily operations, they assume everything else you've told them about your sales and operations is also an exaggeration.
Right. And when trust evaporates, the premium on your multiple evaporates right along with it.
So clean numbers eliminate buyer hesitation.
They do. They provide a clear, undeniable, and auditable picture of the business's health.
Okay, so we have this trinity. Documented operations to ensure fulfillment happens without you. Repeatable sales to ensure revenue grows without you. And clean financials to prove the first two things are actually happening.
That's the foundation.
And if one of those pillars is missing, the whole structure just feels precarious. Like, think of a successful franchise.
So that's a great way to frame it.
Right. The secret to a franchise's valuation isn't just having a great recipe for the food, which is the sales.
Yeah.
It's having a manual so literally anyone can cook it exactly the same way every time, which is operations, while tracking every single cent at the register, which is the financials.
Exactly. If you have great sales and operations but terrible financials, the buyer thinks, are they actually making money or just moving cash around?
Yeah.
And if you have clean books and good ops but no repeatable sales process, the buyer thinks, well, what happens when the market shifts or the rainmaker retires? The trinity has to be completely intact.
And once that trinity is established, that is the exact moment a business transitions from being merely a successful venture into becoming a highly valuable, sellable asset.
That is the turning point, yes.
Okay, so let's say a founder listening to this deep dive has all three of those dialed in. The ops are documented, the sales flow predictably, the books are audited and pristine.
A dream scenario.
Right. How do we take that from being just stable to being exponentially valuable?
Well, according to our source material, the accelerator here is automation.
Okay, but let me stop you right there. Because if I'm a buyer, or even just an employee listening to this, the first thing everyone assumes when they hear the word automation is mass layoffs.
Yeah, the robot takeover.
Exactly. Is the goal here to basically fire everyone and present a completely humanless company to a buyer? Like, look, no salaries.
No, not at all. And that is a very common misconception that actually holds a lot of companies back. What's really fascinating here is that buyers aren't looking to eliminate people. They are looking for operational leverage.
Operational leverage.
Yes. Automation is not a headcount reduction strategy, okay? It is a scalability strategy.
Oh, okay. Break the math of that down for us. How does a buyer actually calculate operational leverage into a higher valuation?
So you got to think about linear versus nonlinear scaling. If your company relies entirely on manual systems, even if they are perfectly well documented, scaling is linear. If you want to process 5 times the number of orders, you have to hire 5 times the number of administrative staff to do the manual data entry, the manual inventory counting, the manual follow-ups.
Right. It's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, your revenue goes up, but your expenses go up at the exact same rate. Your profit margins stay completely flat, or they might even compress because managing a massive workforce introduces all these new complexities.
Yeah, I mean, if my order volume spikes 300%, human data entry just breaks down. People get tired, they make typos, shipments get delayed, it gets messy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But automation acts as a digital nervous system.
a digital nervous system. I like that.
It's software routing information from your CRM directly to your fulfillment center and updating your accounting ledger instantly without human synapses needing to fire.
Right.
I mean, an API connection doesn't care if you have 10 orders today or 10,000. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't need a coffee break. So with automation, if your revenue goes up 5 times, maybe your headcount only needs to go up, say, 1.5 times.
Meaning your profit margins expand massively as you grow.
Precisely. And that is operational leverage. Automation is this massive green flag to potential buyers because it proves the infrastructure can handle a surge in growth without snapping.
It proves the business can absorb new market share efficiently.
Exactly.
I really love that phrase, a digital nervous system, because when you use automation to handle the heavy lifting of routing information, you aren't just making the business more efficient. You are fundamentally changing the role of the humans in the business.
Yes, you got it.
Your team stops doing robotic data entry and they start focusing on high-level strategy, relationship building, problem solving. But, and this is a big but, this transition removing dependency on the rank and file staff through automation, it actually exposes the biggest, most dangerous bottleneck of all.
Oh, yes, it does. It leads directly to what the text identifies as the ultimate valuation destroyer.
The owner trap.
The owner trap.
The text is absolutely ruthless about this concept. I mean, it presents a harsh reality that goes against pretty much everything startup culture teaches us.
Oh, completely. We are taught to glorify the hustle,
Yeah.
right? To be the first one in the office and the last one out.
Yeah, the grind.
Right. But the source material explicitly states that heavy reliance on the owner actively reduces business value.
Yeah.
The harder you work in your daily operations, the less your business is actually worth on the open market.
It is such a profound paradox for many founders. I mean, they built the company through sheer force of will, but a buyer is looking at this purely as an investment vehicle.
Exactly. If the business requires the owner's daily input just to survive, it isn't an asset.
What is it then?
It is just a highly demanding, highly stressful job. And private equity firms, they do not want to buy a job.
No, they don't. Let's look at the actual mechanics of how this destroys a deal, because I've seen situations where an owner wants to sell, they show a buyer a seemingly incredible profit margins, say. They are netting $500,000 a year.
A great number.
Right. But then the buyer digs in and realizes the founder is working 80 hours a week doing the jobs of the CEO, the chief marketing officer, and the chief operating officer.
All by themselves.
All by themselves.
And that is exactly where the concept of owner replacement cost comes into play during valuation.
Owner replacement cost.
Yeah. The buyer looks at that $500,000 in profit and says, okay, if I buy this company and you leave, I have to go out and hire a CEO, a CMO, and a COO at market rates just to keep the lights on.
Which, depending on the market, might cost $600,000 in salaries.
Easily.
So suddenly, that highly profitable business is actually operating at a $100,000 deficit the exact moment the founder walks out the door.
Exactly. The profit was completely illusory. It was just unpaid wages to the founder.
Wow.
You really have to shift your perspective. Think about buying a stock in a publicly traded company. You don't buy shares in Apple and expect that you'll have to go to the factory and pull the levers yourself.
Or personally call clients to close deals for them.
Right. You buy the stock to yield a return passively, based on the systems the company already has in place. The buyers of private businesses want the exact same thing.
It's like the difference between being the star player versus the head coach.
Oh, that's a good one.
If you're the star player and you leave, the team loses. The value is gone. But if you're the coach who built a great playbook, which is your systems, a new owner can step in, hand that playbook to someone else, and the team just keeps winning.
Exactly. Structured businesses attract better buyers and command stronger multiples specifically because they run independently of the person who built them.
It's really the transition from being the key operator to becoming the chairman of the board. You have to actively engineer your own obsolescence.
That's the ultimate goal.
So the point of all these systems, the documented operations, the repeatable sales, the pristine financials, the digital nervous system of automation, this entire predictability paradigm we've been discussing, it's all to make you, the owner, entirely unnecessary to the daily function of the machine.
Yes. Reducing owner dependency is the ultimate proof to the market that you have built a systematic, predictable operation.
It's the final piece of the puzzle.
It is. When a buyer sees that the founder could step away for a year and the company would still hit its growth targets, they know the asset will survive the transition. There is no fear that the magic will leave when the founder hands over the keys.
And that is how you unlock true, massive, multi-generational value.
Absolutely.
It really requires a complete rewiring of how you view your role in your own company. You have to stop building a job for yourself, and you have to start building an asset for the market.
Could not have said it better myself.
Okay. We have covered some incredible high-level ground today, unpacking architecting value, scaling business through systematic predictability.
We really have.
For you listening, we've gone on a deep journey into the mechanics of valuation, understanding exactly why unpredictable revenue is a massive red flag, and exploring how a highly structured, scalable asset is actually constructed.
It all distills down to a few core principles that completely reframe the purpose of business growth.
Let's lock those in. If you take nothing else away from this deep dive, remember these 3 key takeaways. First, build systems before you chase aggressive growth.
Crucial. Growth without systems creates chaos and compresses margins. But systems create operational leverage, stability, and ultimately, predictability.
Exactly. Second takeaway, predictability directly increases your multiple. Buyers are not purchasing your past revenue, they are purchasing the certainty of your future cash flow, and they heavily penalize risk.
So true.
And third, businesses that can run without the owner are fundamentally more valuable and scalable. You have to move from being the primary operator to being the architect of a machine that just doesn't need your daily input.
Which raises an important question, and it's actually a thought experiment I want to leave the listener with today.
Let's hear it.
It's a tough one, but it is absolutely necessary if you want to gauge where you actually stand. If you're unexpectedly locked out of your business for an entire month starting tomorrow, no phone calls, no emails, no access to the building or the servers, which of your systems would break first?
Oh, wow.
And what does that weak link tell you about your company's true valuation in the eyes of a buyer right now?
Oof, that is a question that will keep you up at night. But diagnosing that weak link is exactly the kind of work that leads to a massive exit down the road. To learn more about building scalable, high-value businesses with the right systems and strategy, visit www.blackpagoda.com.